welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. Joined today by Dan Mills. How's it going?
All right, mate. Thanks. How are you?
Very well. All the better for enjoying your videos online, hey?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we get some slack for him as well, but I'm glad you like him.
That was really good. For anybody who's listening and hasn't checked them out, um, tongue-in-cheek, ironic humor, very northern. Who is your comic inspirations?
Oh, mate. I watched a lot of like Ricky Gervais stuff, The Office
Yeah,
and extras and that kind of thing. Yeah. Peter Kay, like I said, like northern
yeah.
dry comics. That's kind of my thing. So yeah, that's where it
Yeah,
comes
it
from.
was Peter Kay that was kind of jumping off the screen at me there, sharing it.
Yeah, somebody's commented that before. I think.
Yeah. He's apparently a bit of a recluse now, I've heard.
I don't blame him. Like if I had the money to, I would be.
Would you? Like, what would you spend your days doing?
Oh, not a lot. Like my ideal is retire into the country with a farm.
Yeah. Would you be busy with the farm? Do you ever work on a farm?
Grew up on one.
Did
Yeah, yeah,
you? Oh, so you
yeah.
know,
So
right? I
yeah.
only did
So
3 months in Australia. I was killed.
oh no, I was doing it in Donny. It's very different.
Shitter.
Yeah, a lot shitter.
All right. So Dan, what's the name of the company?
Our business is called Hiiya, and yeah,
How'd you
we
come up with that?
launched. How did I come up with it?
Yeah.
I'll be honest. So we started up in April, and myself and Jack Dagwell, has worked with me for about 8 years. And basically, when we were trying to come up with a name, we did what everyone does. We had all the lists of like all the shitty corporate lingo that you could come up
Yeah.
with, chat GPT'd it, and we hated all of them. And I literally just one day turned to my 2-year-old and was like, "Oh, what we call in the business?" And she said, "Hiya, Daddy." And higher with one eye had gone, but because we were on the cheap, we bought the domain with two eyes for £1.
Lovely, lovely. No, good stuff. I quite like it. So Dan, give us people the elevator pitch into your background into recruitment. You've been doing this for a little while now, hey? It's not your first
Yeah,
day off the farm in Donny.
yeah. So I've been doing tech recruitment for what, like 12, 13 years, something like that now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, got into it same as everybody really, to be honest. Like when it fell into it. Started as a grad at Gravitas, um, back when they just launched their Leeds office
Yeah.
for first time. Um, and
What
was
year was that,
originally,
Dan?
I want to say 2012. I
Okay. All
think
right.
I think it was I think it was 2012 without looking. But yeah, small team. I got the benefit of it was a relatively new desk, which was cold. Borrowing my manager at the time, Joe. Um, it was yeah, it was straight. Get on the
Yeah.
phone and do BD from day one.
Was that like
Uh,
an S3 on steroids environment?
uh, no, like a lot of the leaders are from S3, but I think it was. I've never worked in S3 per se, but I've heard stories. So I don't think it was as heavy-handed. But yeah, I got a lot of time with Joe early, so like I think that probably set me up well. And uh, it was do the numbers, do the reps, get the time in, learn the process. Um, so that sort of stuff was drilled in me
Mm.
quite early. Same with the BD thing. I think now it's not as common that on day one you start pitching cold clients and trying to get the desk going, but we didn't know any different. So my first market was contract data warehousing and business intelligence in the NHS in Yorkshire. So it's quite niche.
That is.
um, and yeah, did well. So was top rookie biller in my first year, and set myself up for. I think I finished year two on just over like 250,000 or something like that. Left there. Um, I'll be honest, I'd not seen anything else, so I was like, I want to go and see some different environments, work in some different types of businesses, and and see what that's like. Joined a business called Corcom, which was pretty much everywhere I've been actually has been like grow something from very early, if not from scratch. So they were at the time, I think it was about five in an office in Leeds. So pretty much startup mode, same thing, tech. And yeah, helped grow that few like for a few people and won some big client contracts. Helped with the training, wrote the training, and brought a few people through the ranks there. Was there for about, I think I'm guessing now without the numbers in front of me. I think it was about 2.5 years. Really good time with it there, and then joined iSource. Originally to start a marketing desk, but we quickly found that, I'll be honest, the fees were quite low based on the salaries and that kind of thing. Like we swapped back quite well, fairly sharpish to tech, and grew a data team focusing on commercial data engineers, basically data analysts, data engineers. Um, that's where I hired Jack, who's now with me at Hiiya, and we grew that to about 4 or 5 people. Did really well, and to be honest, we started to do some really cool networking events. Like the guy that owns it, Jeff, he still has the Auction Mafia, and I think he's doing some other stuff now with like Silicon, Yorkshire and that kind of thing. But he is probably the guy that taught me the most about networking events and that kind of thing. And we started to do some really good ones in data and build a bit of a brand. Um, then 2019 rejoined Gravitas um, uh, to go and run their leads offering. At the time, I think it was doing about 450 grand or something GP. Um, quite a small team. Trying to sort of get things going in Leeds again. Like all their offices were doing really well. So Manchester, London, particularly in the UK, were absolutely flying, and they wanted to build a presence in Yorkshire.
You're quite protective over your team, aren't you? You wouldn't be shy of a LinkedIn beef
I'm quite protective over.
over your team. You wouldn't be shy of a LinkedIn beef. The first time I came across you,
Oh yeah,
there, what was it? You were calling somebody, somebody was calling you, or you were calling somebody. What? Can you give us an insight into that?
yeah. I think I know what you're referring to. The Rec to Rec saga. Yeah. So I had a guy, close friend of mine, Matt Nicholson, was working for me at the time. He's since set up his own business. Shout out to Matt. He's a good guy. And he received a Rec to Rec message that was, um, I just thought it was a bad way to do it. Basically, he said like, "Do you want a job?" And Matt said no. And then the follow up proceeded to just slag me off. Like I'd never met the guy, never spoke to the guy.
Wow.
Uh, he didn't know that me and Matt were like close mates. And Matt was showing me the messages. I think he got to the point where it's like, "Oh, Dan, slags everyone off that he's worked for before and all this sort of stuff," which I categorically don't. Like I'm still pals with all the people with before. Um, and yeah, it was pretty airy, pretty fast. So I tried to do the like business thing of ring him up and this that, and other, and the guy hung up on me and wouldn't take my calls. He then proceeded to say he wrote a post, I think first. I think he wrote the first one that was like, "Oh, this recruitment owner, like da 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 da, he's coming for me," and I wasn't. I was just trying to speak to him to be like, "That's not the way you do business." Um, got blocked and everything, and I wrote a post calling him out and basically just put messages in it, and it went viral. Like I
It
think
went
that's
nuts.
yeah, yeah. The director of Juventus football shared it, which was a bit mad because again, like why he cares about recruitment in Leeds, I'll never know. And I think people were calling out like for us to do a charity boxing match in Germany.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so
You
that
still
was
up for that?
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know about now. Like I've put a bit of weight on, and I'm not as fit as I was back then. But yeah. So that went mad. But that was yeah. That was an odd time. But as far as the team goes, like I've always like loved working with the people I've managed over the years, and um, some have gone on to do some awesome stuff. Like a lot of people have since started businesses or are now like in senior leadership, that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, we grew that little office from I think we had about 8 people to 26, 27, like in tech recruitment sales. the GP went from like about 450 to just shy of about 2 million a year. Um, Built a really good leadership team, and yeah, it went really well. I was there for like 4.5 years and left in November to have a go at doing my own thing because
Just
I
just
always
back
like
in,
it.
just back into that post. So that was an example of something that could have gone really wrong. Like if Ricky Gervais talks about writing a joke and about being bulletproof in how you go about it. And I can't remember how you constructed it, but it was in quite a bulletproof way. And I'm sure, and you turned what could have been a negative situation into a really positive one. And you got all the reach and all the rest, and it worked out. It was probably the first glimmer of your social media skills that we're seeing now, hey?
I don't know, like I never intended it to be that. Like I never went out my way to like to start the post. I was trying to actually defend myself like from what I was getting sent that was being posted about me.
Yeah,
Um, I tagged the people in it to kind of almost validate the fact that I still get on with like Jeff from iSource, like I said, John from Corcom, and the guys that I've worked with before. Like it was almost kind of like stick up for me. Like we're still mates. I would still go for a beer with anyone. I still have.
yeah.
I recently met up with Jeff, but um, yeah, it was more that than anything. And I think obviously once those guys, thanks to them lads, said actually we still get on, we're still friendly, then that kind of
And then it just went.
then it took off. Yeah, then it got a life of its own. I have no idea where that came from.
I've just watched a few of the videos there. They're really, really good, really talented. Did it take you as long to come up with it? Like, what made you go down this road? Like, Gravitas quite a traditional firm, right? Where you would have been quite KPI driven. Like, it's a really good business that's built to scale and all the rest. But it wouldn't be known for like creativity or anything like that. Like, was this something you always wanted to do, or?
Um, I, I've always been a little bit creative. I think, like with the events and that kind of stuff we've done, like I quite like that side of it. The We saw a gap in the market. So early doors when we started Hiiya, we did do the usual like, hey, you can work with us. We've got loads of experience and that kind of thing with the
Yeah,
videos, and we got tumbleweed. Like it just did.
yeah.
It was really hard to stand out. There's I think what 30,000 recruitment agencies or something registered in the UK at the minute. Um, you've got to do something different and make a bit of noise to get noticed. We for a long time, like I've managed teams that sort of laugh at some of the ways recruitment is done. Not saying they're right or wrong, just yeah, we laughed at a few of them. So we decided to lean into it and be like, okay, well, what are we about? How we speak is like like this. Um, in the same way we do business, it's people driven and that kind of
Relatable content, really.
yeah. And I think we can now, like you said, obviously working with someone else, you've always got in the back of your mind, I'm a representative of someone else's brand and business, and there's things you can and can't say, and how you can say those things. Whereas for yourself, um, you can kind of say what you want and how you want it. Obviously, there is a repercussion if people don't like it or you're a dick. But yeah, we just thought, well, we know that already that a lot of people feel this way about how recruitment works and
But
this kind of
I
thing.
think a lot of recruiter the beauty of those videos is most recruiters will think the same way that you do, that a lot of that is outdated and I don't want to appear like that and all that. So I think you probably tapped into the inner voice of like 30,000 businesses and they're like, ah, he's just nailed it. Nobody's done this before.
Yeah, and we're not afraid to make a dick of ourselves. Like so, like
Yeah.
we bought a few wigs on Amazon, for example, and stuck them on in the video, and we got an inflatable dinosaur suit. Like I think like just when we started up, everything was on the line, right? I've got a 2-year-old, got a mortgage, um, So it is really make or break. It still is, like we're still new. So we just kind of went into it and was like, well, if we're gonna do it, like let's just go all in and not have any regrets of how we would have done it different and that kind of thing, and just lean into everything we think. If people like it, great. If they don't, well, at least we know we did it our way and put his money where his mouth was and tried it, I guess.
The experience, so when I look at your background, you've had the ideal experience to set up a recruitment firm. So like we coached about 100 startups. The biggest thing that people didn't have, well, the two things. One was they weren't professionally trained as a rookie, and the second thing was they weren't trained in how to manage people as a building manager. And you see it all the time. Those are massive gaps in their skill set, and it's very hard to get it at a later stage. Um, just in terms of the traditional way that you were that those traditional values that you're going to bring to your new company mixed with the events and some of the comedy videos and all the rest. Can you kind of just describe what you think best practice is when it comes to management and leadership?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it. I've been really fortunate to have, like you said, a good run into businesses early. I think that was probably key, like seeing ground up builds from really experienced recruitment leaders as well. Like I've learned loads from the people that I've been fortunate enough to work alongside and under and that kind of thing. And um, I guess I've taken bits from all of them, like the different ways of working. It's kind of why I've moved around a little bit. Obviously, opportunity is why I changed jobs, but also the environment and the people, like seeing different ways of working. So I I personally blend a lot of what I've seen elsewhere. If I was to highlight it and point it, people driven first off, like always looking for opportunities to promote people and give them opportunity to learn, that kind of thing. I think if you expect the best out of people, you tend to get it. Like it's when people assume, I don't know, oh, you're not going to be able to do that, or they don't put the time into the team that they don't get the best out of them. Um, I am quite data driven, and that probably came later in my career. Like the gravitas stuff really taught me that they are processes,
What type of data?
conversions mainly, like managing conversions, because it doesn't matter if you've got two people or 200 people. Um, Ratios, percentages, that kind of thing, scale up or down depending on what you're working with. So it's really translatable to pretty much any size of business or any size of team. So things like I don't know, how many meetings it's taking you to get a job, like how many of the we used to call them A class jobs and B and C class jobs, but like what level of commitment jobs convert at what percentages, how many do you need? So you can kind of forward plan. And if the billings aren't there on day one of month one or whatever it is, you know how to get there. So you can take sanity almost in, you know the numbers, you know the process. So if you just do this amount of work, the likelihood is, obviously you need a little bit of luck, but the likelihood is that it's gonna work. So yeah, I work to the numbers still. Um, but people driven, giving people opportunity, and I think allowing people to say things the way they feel comfortable to say it. So I've tried scripts and stuff in the past. I've even written them for members of the team. Um, I think whenever you write those things, people read them without their lived experience or their personality, and it's very difficult then for them to add stuff to it and ultimately build proper relationships with clients and candidates and that kind of thing. Whereas it's always done well if you kind of, here's a framework. This is kind of where you want the call to go, or what you kind of want as your objectives out of the call. Go do your thing, and I can kind of steer you through it. That works better as well.
So you mentioned you're data driven. I'm curious now when it's your own business now and you follow that ethos. are you going to be able to persuade experienced hires to that you hire to also be data driven, or will you focus in on more people without recruitment experience and train them up?
The plan is experienced hires. Um, I'll be honest, like I've done both. Like I've hired experience, I've hired grads and that kind of thing. I think because we're so young, getting an experienced team early gives you then the choice to build around it. Whereas there's two of us at the minute, so hiring a
Mm.
bunch of grads is probably not the wisest thing just from a time point of view. Um, but data driven, I think all experienced recruiters should be data driven, and I say that not from a place of oh it's KPI bashing and this that and other. Like I think if you know your numbers, you can do the opposite. Like because you know that you don't need to do 100 dials or whatever to do a deal. You know your conversion is X. Like and that knowing that um means that you can flex things. So you don't have to blanket KPIs. You don't have to tell people how long they should be sat at a desk or calling for or how many meetings they need to do because they will know. And if they don't, it's very easy to work it back from historic data and have a look at what works.
And do you like, is there like a formula spreadsheet that you work off for that, or like is it ad hoc, or like what? Obviously, you're very small now, so if you hire two people, you can easily have the time to do that. Like what, as it grows, is it would you go back? Would you go to like blanket KPIs, or well, what's your experience
Um,
on that?
I think you need enough data to be able to make an educated decision on the ratios, right? There's no point just guessing the numbers from a week's worth of work. So you have to start somewhere. Um, Usually those things are the usual stuff. So how many outbound calls do you need to do to get a client meeting? How many client meetings do you need to get a job on? Okay, how many jobs do you need to do a deal? How many interviews do you need to do a deal? The usual stuff that most people measure. Um, but you don't have to look at everything. So I have a saying is just measure what matters. So um, historically, I've managed lots of different types of consultants. Some that are fantastic on meetings. So there's no point targeting those people doing 500 calls sat at time to the desk. Like they're better off going to take a client for a beer because if you do 10 of those meetings, they're going to win a job. Um, Similarly, I've had people that don't like doing meetings. Like they're better sat at a desk over a phone and building relationships that way. Well, again, there's no point telling that person to do 30 in-person meetings when they feel uncomfortable doing them or they don't like it. So yeah, we normally take about a quarter's worth of data and then work it back from there as to where they're getting their wins from. And just I think there's a misconception that you should try to force people to develop areas that they're not particularly good at and like work on things that they're not good at. Whereas I don't believe that. I think double down on the thing that they're naturally strong in.
Mm,
And it's easier to get them to win in that than it is to try and teach them something they don't know
yeah.
or don't want to do.
So, big once you get a business up and running for somebody else, and you have a decent sized team, you're on a nice salary, you know your candidates, you know your clients, you know your numbers. Why leave?
Why leave? There was a few bits. I think, and I've done that. Most of the places I've been, we kind of got to a point where it was working, and then I moved on. Like I said, opportunities. So there were opportunities to do different things. So like the event stuff. I saw Jeff is one of the best guys in the north of England at events, right? So
Yeah.
like I wanted to learn that. There were things that I saw in the opportunities that I moved to that I wanted to learn how to do and be around people that knew how to do those things. So for example going back to Gravitas, John Ellerbeck, the head honch there. I mean, there's a lot of them. So Alex is fantastic with people. Joe has trained me as a graduate, and I know how she works and trust her opinion. But um, yeah, John scaled £100 million, whatever it is, recruitment group global. Like you can't not learn something from being in a
Yeah.
room with someone like that. Um, so I just found opportunities to learn things. In the back of my head, I've always wanted to grow something. I like the challenge of building something and owning that. Um, Partly down to so my dad's an entrepreneur,
Ah, okay,
and
very good.
yeah, in the penis extension business, which is pretty niche. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Talk to me about that.
um, I mean, there's not a lot to say. So he started out as a salesman in cosmetic surgery and helped grow some of the
Biggest
biggest
penises.
biggest cosmetic surgery to begin with. So like the usual stuff, like I say usual stuff like boob jobs and things like that that were
Yeah,
pretty common in plastic surgery. And then more recently, found that penis extension surgery was a thing and it was big in I think in America, and brought it over to the UK and
yeah.
built a business doing that. Um, but yeah, that sort of drive to build
How do we
something.
get on this Christmas card list?
Yeah, yeah, mates rates. Yeah, I can have a word. Um, but yeah, so I've always had that like role model of my dad building stuff.
Yeah,
Um, and I think that's kind of where it came from in terms of starting up.
yeah. So it hasn't been plain sailing, it's fair to say, since you started, right?
No, mate, it's been rough. Like I think look, we started in April this year, which I think most recruiters would admit is not the best timing in terms of market conditions to
Oh,
start a business. Um, but about sort of 2, 3 weeks before we launched the business, my missus, yeah, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Um, yeah, sorry, mate. Yeah, it was really rough. Like she got called DCIS, which is fortunately like a low stage of aggression. Like it's considered stage 0, so it means it's not metastasized, it's not moving around. But you hear cancer and
oof.
it terrifies you. So that was literally a matter of weeks before launching the business, and I'll be honest, like we almost didn't. Um, there was a lot going on. I've got a 2-year old and a mortgage and everything else, and obviously the risk of going from, to be honest, nice salary and everything else at Gravitas, and could probably walk back into a job like that to
Yeah,
go to nothing. And while all that's going on was hard work, it was my missus who sort of pressured me into doing it. To be honest, she was like, if this doesn't make you sort of get on and have a go and stop wondering what if, then I don't know what will. So yeah, we went through that. The first 3 months of launching a business, that was going on in the background. Scans, operations, everything else. A mastectomy later, and a lot of other um, shit I hope nobody has to deal with. Uh, Fortunately, she's now cancer free. So yeah, that was a lot.
Jesus Christ. So you kind of, so you have to do the new business thing. You have to deal with that. Did it pause the working stage, or were you able to kind of get a bit done, or like who's taking care of the 2-year-old when all this is happening? Like,
Uh, it was, I mean, it's hard. Like we balanced it between my Mrs. Mum's been amazing. Like
yeah,
she lives very local and really helps. Obviously, my Mrs. was off work for a long time. And I don't know how to explain it. There's a lot of waiting, right? When you're going through that sort of thing,
yeah,
waiting
right.
waiting for appointments, that kind of thing. So there was a lot of time in the middle where nobody really knew what was going on, and it's more the worry and the stress of it than it is actually fixing the problem.
Yeah,
So uh, I threw myself into work. I'll be honest, because it's something I could control.
yeah, right.
I knew that I could manage it. I knew that I've done it before. Whereas the cancer thing,
Yeah.
yeah, it was all new to me. So that was it was terrifying. Like there's no.
And now that she's cancer free, like has that changed like you and her goals for what this business is going to be or for what your life's going to look like? Did you have any of those epiphanies that you're like, oh fuck, like all this nearly didn't work?
Has it changed where I want to take a business? No, I don't think so. In terms of life goals, they've always been the same. Like get on that farm. My missus is
Yeah.
into
Get the penis
horses.
extension and get on the farm.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's made me more driven.
Yeah.
and almost like remove the fear. I know it sounds silly, but when I started, I was very nervous around like what am I going to look like to my peers? What
Yeah,
happens if it fails? Because let's be honest, statistically, we probably will. Like if you look at startups, I think what is it like 20-30% of them fail in their first year and this and another. And um, but
yeah,
yeah, the odds are stacked against you. And I think most people, that sort of fear of failing stops people doing something. Whereas going through all that
yeah.
just kind of goes, well, yeah, throw it all out the window. Life's too short. Have a go. Stick your neck out. Do what you think's right, and see if it works.
What's your
Hopefully,
vision? What's your vision for where it's gonna go and possibly end up? Like you've been in small founder-led businesses and you've been in something that took on the world. Um, what's in your crystal ball?
I would like a small team, if I'm honest. Like I would like it comfortable enough that I could take a holiday,
Yeah,
um, and it still make money. Um, but yeah, I've no ambitions for like world domination. I
yeah,
think some of the best teams that I've worked in, managed that kind of thing, were small, highly skilled recruiters. Um, so I'd like to get somewhere near that. Probably if we can get to like 10, 15 people, I'd be very happy.
Tim Ferriss talks about r after you get up and running and successful with a decent amount of profit, he then talks about a process of working yourself out of it. So you're able to take a day off, then a week off, and then you build it up to 3 months off. And he has a process that he puts in, just making other people more accountable for it. Um, do you think that maybe your job will end up just being business development and going out there and whining and dining accounts and like helping bring in new accounts and that, or do you just love the grind of the deal?
Um, so I prefer BD in terms of the two halves of the job, like delivery and business development. I actually prefer the BD side, um, but I've no intention of getting this business to a point where I'm not in it. I mean, like long term, that might change, but
Yeah,
um,
right.
short to medium, yeah, I enjoy recruitment. It's sad to say that, isn't it? Like it's weird to say that,
This is
but
the Sad Bastard podcast. I should have just told you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I like my job. Like I like doing it. I'd like to carry on doing it for as long as it makes sense to.
Yeah, sounds it pays the bills. Um, and one of the luxuries of working for somewhere like Gravitas is they're a big enough company where they can throw a bunch of money at a market and see if it works, right? So they're probably watching their peers all coming out of S3, setting up their rival companies, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm in Germany, I'm in Austria or Switzerland. I'm in the US. We're opening up this market and this niche and all the rest. Now, that's that's a great luxury that they have, but it's also a great luxury that you got to see somebody else's money in action on that. And you've also seen what it's like to run local to local within Leeds. Like, is your vision to have an international department, maybe bring in some bigger one-off fees as well, or are you really going to steer into the local stuff, or make sure both? Like, what does that small team's vision look like?
Short term is UK,
Okay.
which but like that we know there's bigger fees in the US and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Like that's what people do. But I mean, I've always built teams and my desk and that kind of thing in the UK. So there's enough money here to do well. So it's like the plan is to stick doing that.
And will you do 360 or 180, or how will you break it all down?
Um, well, currently there's me and Jack, so we're both 360. But
Yeah.
in terms of scaling it, uh,
And when you
I
say
always
scale, you mean 10 to
grow,
20 people.
yeah, like grow a few, yeah. Um, I think everyone should have some. capability to do BD. Now that varies, I think, depending on the individual. So going out there doing cold calls and meetings and that kind of thing takes a certain type of person, and I think the skill set for that is very different to delivery. Like I've rarely met someone who's as good at both sides of recruitment or equally as good at both sides of recruitment. Um, but I also think even if you're on delivery, again, this is probably a gravitas thing, but how you use your delivery consultants to up, they called them 270s rather than 180,
Yeah.
because it was lead gen, referrals, recommendations, all that sort of stuff. Like even your delivery consultants can win business or penetrate accounts you already have and open up new areas and new divisions that you might not have had access to before, and up your sort of, I don't
Having
know,
that commercial mindset with everybody in the business, right?
yeah, it really does. It does make a massive difference.
And with regard remote work to office space to like what's your thoughts on that?
So we've got a little office, but
Yeah,
I mean it is little. And Jack doesn't come to it, or he comes to it like maybe a couple of times a month. He works from
yeah,
home, but it's purely because I've got three dogs and a toddler running around my house. So
yeah.
um, it became quite difficult, quite quick to be on the phone and march about. I'm quite loud and Yorkshire accent.
Why do
Um,
you have three dogs?
why do I have three dogs?
Yeah.
Because
It's a lot of dogs, eh? It's a lot of stuff to
it's
pick up.
it's two more dogs than I'd like. But my missus won that argument, so we've got three. Um, but yeah, we've got a little office. I think it depends on the setup. So um, again, if you're hiring experienced consultants and they're performing, I don't see why you need to tell them where to work. I think for juniors, and this is going to sound a little archaic, there is no better way of learning than to be in the room with experienced people. From my experience and my learning, I
Mm.
learned the most when I was sat next to high performing individuals or with high performing individuals, and there were the chats around the sort of making a coffee or even just listening to how they said things, because it's not necessarily what they're
Mm.
saying, it's how they're
Seeing the
delivering it,
intensity of work as well.
the intensity of work. Yeah, because everyone thinks they work hard until you sit next to somebody who really works hard. um, and again, like I've been privileged enough to be around individuals that set that bar pretty high.
To finish us off, Dan, any words of wisdom for anybody out there who's thinking of going on a similar journey?
Um, words of wisdom. Firstly, don't. It's really hard. But if you genuinely set on it, just lean into what you believe the right thing is to do, and that way, win, lose or draw, you won't have any regrets. So say the things that you think should be said, present yourself and the business in a way that you think you would like to be represented in. And I say that as a man who's dressed in wigs on LinkedIn. Um, but if you lean into what you think is right, whatever the outcome is, you won't be disappointed.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, Dan.
Cheers, mate.